Order of service is up.
And probably everybody should mute. Well, good morning and welcome everyone to the Namaqua Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We are a congregation of open minds, loving hearts, helping hands, gutsy creativity, and feet that walk our talk. My name is Laurel Liefert. I have the honor of serving as the minister of this feisty, passionate, curious, justice-loving community of seekers. And I wonder if we have any visitors with us today, because it would be good to know that we have people who are here perhaps for the first time or are relatively new. So if you are a visitor, would you like to please put your name in the chat room and your email too, if you'd like to get more information. We also have some things going on right now. And so I want to know, I think you probably all got an email maybe yesterday or today. So today's service will be basically focused on the announcement that Doug and I made, which is that the next church year, which starts on July 1st and goes through June of 2022, will be my last year serving as your minister. But I am really happy that we have more time together, and I'm expecting that by the time we do say goodbye in June of 2022, we'll be back in our building. We'll be able to have a big party. We'll be able to hug each other. So it's kind of bittersweet today. We're still Zooming now, which means that we've got Chad Escalier is our Zoomer today, and he will be recording the service. And most of the time you'll be muted. But I think during Joys and Sorrows today, we'll have people put your joys and sorrows in the chat room in the interest of time. And then at the end, instead of having breakout rooms and being in separate small groups, let's all just stay together, and it'll get you a chance to ask questions and maybe have a response to the email. But this is just the beginning of what will be, I hope, a long, gentle, healthy process of saying goodbye. So let us begin with our ministerial intern reading the words to light our chalice. And you notice I have our chalice here in the Aspen room in church, and I'll go ahead and light the flame.
The earth says my name. She speaks in lush rose gardens and sturdy brown rocks. Don't walk away from hurt, she says. Don't evade the bitterness of growth. Growth, she says, comes in sundry cocoons. We must fight to break through each phase. The words of Mercy Williams. May the light of this chalice warm our sundry cocoons, inviting us to grow into this day. Come, let us worship together.
And as we always begin with our congregational affirmation, would you please recite it with me in unison? Love is the spirit of this church, and service its call. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Some of you who were at the service a few weeks ago may remember that I mentioned this song made famous by Elvis, which is I Can't Help Falling in Love with You. And the reason it's become a special one to this congregation is because when we did an all youth service, the grand finale was Lorenzo Scalisi up in the balcony with his ukulele, and then Kylin Zdenek on the stage, beautiful long hair with her guitar, and the two of them sang that duet. So this morning, we have a treat. There's a 6-year-old named Claire Crosby with her ukulele who will be presenting this song.
Hey everyone, it's Claire here. Today I'm going to sing you a song called I Can't Help Falling in Love. Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you. Shall I stay? Would it be a sin? But I can't help falling in love with you. Like a river flows surely to the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things were meant to be. So take my hand, take my whole life too, 'cause I can't help falling in love with you, 'cause I can't help falling in love with you. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Bye.
And now Chad has a time for all ages for us.
And today's Time for All Ages is a book by Oliver Jeffers called The Heart and the Bottle. Once, there was a girl, much like any other, whose head was filled with all the curiosities of the world. With thoughts of the stars, with wonder at the sea, She took delight in finding new things. Until the day she found an empty chair. Feeling unsure, the girl thought the best thing to do was to put her heart in a safe place, just for the time being. So she put it in a bottle and hung it around her neck. And that seemed to fix things. Although in truth, nothing was the same. She forgot about the stars and stopped taking notice of the sea. She was no longer filled with all the curiosities of the world and didn't take much notice of anything, other than how heavy and awkward the bottle had become. But at least her heart was safe. It might never have occurred to the girl what to do had she not met someone smaller and still curious about the world. There was a time when the girl would have known how to answer her, but not now, not without her heart. And it was right at that moment she decided to get it back out of the bottle. But she didn't know how. She couldn't remember. And nothing seemed to work. The bottle couldn't be broken, it just bounced and rolled. Right down to the sea. But there, it occurred to someone smaller and still curious about the world that she might know a way. And it just so happened. She did. The heart was put back where it came from. And the chair wasn't so empty anymore. But the bottle was.
Perfect. Thank you, Claire. Now then, Laurel, you might say, what is this business about you retiring? 70 is not old anymore. And you know, you tell us all the time how much you love us, that after 10 years, you're still honeymooning. How can you leave? I just don't get it. Well, I do love you, and I really do feel like I'm still honeymooning. But I'm sure glad in one way that COVID came, because if not for COVID, I might be saying goodbye like now. But as it is, we have a whole nother year together, and I'm hoping that we can really cherish and savor our time together and grow, because sometimes goodbyes are thrust on us and it's unexpected. And this one we can do with intention and with a great deal of love, and learn things about endings and beginnings and letting go. Plus, I think those of you who are grandparents, or any of you who value family, can understand the draw of Francie and I going back to California, where both of our sons and our grandson now live. You know, it's kind of funny because when we came here in 2011, we left our boys in the Bay Area. You know, it's usually the other way around, where the kids leave home and the parents stay there. But this time it was the moms who left, and we felt kind of bad about that. But then pretty soon after that, Marcus was in seminary and he met a woman named Emily, and the two of them graduated from Star King, and both were ordained as UU ministers, and they got married. and they went to Rochester, New York, where they were co-assistant ministers at the UU church there. And then David finished his community college and was planning to apply to San Francisco State, but darn, he missed the deadline. And so, as fate would have it, he ended up coming to CU Boulder. And because Francie and I had been here for a while, he even got in-state tuition. So now none of us were back in the Bay Area. And then Marcus and Emily had a little baby boy around Thanksgiving in 2015. And Francie and I went and met our first grandson, Henry. And of course, we're just head over heels in love with this little boy. And then Marcus and Emily decided that they would leave Rochester and go into search for their own church. And they ended up being called to a church called North Shore in Vancouver, British Columbia. And so the three of them moved to Vancouver. Francie and I went up there often. And as we were thinking, like, well, maybe after Laurel has her fun as a minister, we'll end up moving to British Columbia so that we can be near our son Marcus and Emily and our sweet grandson Henry. But Emily really had some issues, struggling with postpartum depression and some underlying anxiety that was really exacerbated probably by hormones and by the stress of the job. Eventually, she kind of stepped back from her ministry, and Marcus was the solo minister. You know, it was a match that I think the congregation and Marcus thought would last for decades. I mean, it was an incredible match, but Marcus understood and made a choice to honor family. And so he ended up leaving Vancouver, and the two of them, Marcus and Emily, had a house in Berkeley that Emily's parents helped them buy. And so lo and behold, they end up back in the Bay Area. And then meanwhile, our younger son, David, he decided to go to grad school up at the University of Wyoming. So he moved to Laramie. First, he was going to get a master's in geology, and then his mentor talked him into getting a PhD. So now he was in Laramie, Marcus was in Berkeley, and then once again, because of COVID, an interesting little twist, there was a job that he was looking at that was called, it was in the Mid-Peninsula Open Range District, which is in Northern California. And because of COVID, they were extending the application period. And lo and behold, last October, he got a job as a natural resource specialist. And after he got his PhD in December, he went back to the Bay Area. So it is just so interesting how life works. And you may remember last Sunday, I was talking about what I called a dance of fate and freedom. And so there is just this very mysterious dynamic between things that are out of control, that are kind of the labyrinth, that feels like sometimes you're lost, but you're always really on the right journey. And we then had the freedom to respond to the choice that Marcus and David made to go back to the Bay Area. Another kind of sad twist is that Marcus and Emily's marriage ended right as the pandemic was beginning. So that's another factor, I think, in our decision, is to help Marcus out with Henry. So as I've been thinking back a lot, actually. You know, I'm kind of sentimental by nature. And the reason I chose the prelude that I did, One Voice, is because I was remembering back to when I was installed as your minister. It was just an amazing experience, a ceremony like that, where we created a covenant between me and the congregation. And my friends and singing group from Oakland, half dozen of the other, came out. And we had a big party the night before with rock and roll music. It was in the gymnasium of the high school, Ferguson High School, where we used to meet. And I remember Karen Brock wrote a beautiful poem for me, and she read that. So we partied that night, and then the next day, half dozen of the other presented the music in a service called People Get Ready. So we sang People Get Ready and One Love. And I played the banjo and sang music. And then after that, we went to Foothills because we didn't have a place big enough to have the installation ceremony. And I remember walking in and seeing up on the chancel a painting of Yosemite Falls, which I just burst into tears because that is where my soul and my heart will always be, where I spent 5 years in my youth. And it was Jennifer Klein and a couple of others who created that beautiful painting, which I still have and will take to California. And then the singing group sang, and one of the songs that we sang was One Voice. And we also sang another beloved song, which is Holy Now by Peter Mayer, that we have played sometimes in services. And actually, Meg, I think that we sang it with you one time. And boy, we sang a version where the congregation and the singers were repeating the line, everything is holy now, everything is holy now, everything is holy now, everything is holy now. And then at the end, the choirs circled the congregation and sang a beautiful, simple song called Love Ye One Another. And, you know, ceremonies like that, they changed my life. And I think they probably, well, in fact, I know it changed the life of the congregation because we've been journeying together the last 10 years. And boy, we've gone through so much together. Just, I did my annual report the other day and just realized what this last year has been, not only the pandemic, but the presidential election. And then in last May, the killing of George Floyd, and just so much change and so much that makes our gatherings as a UU congregation, building a beloved community together, all the more precious. I was also thinking back to my dance of Fate and Freedom. So let me just reminisce for a few minutes. This was a very personal day, so I hope you don't mind. But, you know, I graduated from high school and went right into college, which is what my parents expected. But, you know, the Vietnam War was going on, civil rights. I spent a lot of time in the streets protesting and sit-ins. And after my third year, I went to Germany to study German, to learn the language for comparative literature, which was my latest major. And I've told the story before that I decided to stay there. And then the fate part is that when I was in Amsterdam, I got hit by a taxi cab, thrown to the ground, broke a couple of ribs. And the best laid plans, I'd already dropped out of school, but I went back to California. And that's when I started going up to Yosemite and worked there for 5 years. And then decided to change my major. I majored in geography, got my bachelor's, and then went to the University of California, Davis King Hall Law School. And I was 28 and I felt so old. I mean, those kids were like 21, 22. Here I'd been through all this life. So, you know, I didn't have gray hair there, but I was very mature and old. And so I did finish law school, took the California bar exam, thinking I would never do that again because it's, you know, quite a test. So I did pass it, and I got a job in Oakland with a kind of fancy litigation firm. I was a trial lawyer. And boy, I'll tell you, the minute I walked into that office, I kind of knew it wasn't for me. But I'm persevering, and I had student loans, and so I stayed there. And then I went to another firm thinking that it would be more righteous work and I'd have more client contact. But by then, Marcus had been born. Francie and I met each other when we were 33. Francie had Marcus when she was 36. And I was doing billable hours, which meant I had this little internal clock that ticked every 6 minutes to bill the client. So I found myself when I was reading a book or giving Marcus a bath, that the clock was still ticking, and it just felt wrong. And so when I was offered a full-time position on the faculty of a company that was helping law students pass their bar exams, I jumped at it. Took a big financial dive. Francie always teases me that ever since I've known her, I've been downwardly mobile, but happier. And so, I never wanted to take another bar exam. I've taken and passed now 9 bar exams. So I went all over the country and was teaching law students. And I kind of saw myself as a midwife, that I was helping birth these people because you had to pass the bar exam to get a license. The only thing I was a little bit ambivalent because I was birthing them into a profession that had brought out not good things in me. That was another reason I quit, is I was getting much more aggressive because trial lawyers have to be aggressive. And I was learning not to trust people so much and not to be so generous. And, the culture that you work in and the culture like a congregation that you're in does have an impact on how your life unfolds and what personality traits are brought out in you. Well, so I was almost 40 when I gave birth to our second son, David. And then it was shortly after that that we walked through the doors of a Unitarian Universalist church in Oakland. And sometimes I almost feel like warning people who walk through our doors that your life may never be the same. And that was certainly true for me. And it's interesting, yesterday at our worship associate meeting, Chad was talking about, I don't know, Chad, you'll have to explain it, but seeing things like a V, where one side are the values that you don't want to cultivate, and the other side are the values that you do. And law was kind of behavior that was leading me in the direction of the values I didn't want to cultivate. But boy, as soon as I walked into the UU church and started hearing the sermons and listening to the music and meeting the people, I could feel myself leaning in the direction of integrating my values with my outer life. And I think that's why I cried in the pews, probably for the first 3 months of Sundays that I was there. And then the first time I preached, which was back in 1998, I was a worship associate. It was a moment that, again, just changed my life. I sometimes, when people ask about my calling, I'll say that that was the moment, because I felt like I was singing to this congregation who I loved and talking from my heart rather than from my head. And one of the things that happened is that the very next day, I was back at a law school teaching. I think it was civil procedure or contracts or something. And instead of singing, I felt like I had like ashes in my mouth or broken glass or just something that was such a vivid contrast to that day before. I also had felt the day before. It's funny because lawyers are often accused as being full of hot air. So there is a little bit of a hot air aspect to this, but I felt like in my law career, I had been in a boat that was just kind of dormant, in a sea that was just not moving anywhere. And that then when I was preaching, it was like the wind came up and filled my sails. And then it made me come alive. So it was actually when I was 50 that I started seminary. And then I was 60 when I came here, when Francie and I uprooted our lives and came to Namaqua. And here's another stroke of fate, is that when I went into search, there were actually 3 other congregations that were interested in me. And I went and pre-candidated with them, spent a weekend with them. And I thought sure that when they called, I would get offered 3 different churches and I would have the hard decision of choosing which one to go to. Well, you know what? I wasn't the first choice for any of them. So it was actually in the second round that I decided to apply at Namaqua. And the irony there is that I wasn't Namaqua's first choice. The ministry was offered to someone who decided it was too expensive to live in Colorado and so said, no, thank you. So, but for those two things, I wouldn't have been here. And the 3/4 time ended up working out well, because then I was able to teach and earn some extra money teaching law students during 3 months of the 3/4 time. And then after a couple of years, I became a full-time minister here. You know, some more, well, maybe I'll save it for the sermon. But once again, you know, just think about the dance that we do between our free choice and responding to things, and then the things that we can't control. And I don't know how it struck you. Maybe we can hear more about that when you receive the email explaining my choice of going back to California. But we will have plenty of time to process this. And one of the things that we thought was a good idea was for Doug to reassure you that there is a well-worn and organized path forward that will help ensure that after I leave, you're going to be more than okay. And so, Doug, let me turn it over to you to explain kind of what's next for Namaqua in the coming years.
Oh my goodness, 10 years. Laurel, it's amazing you've been with us 10 years. You, among many other things, you taught us a song aimed at teaching our children the fundamentals of Unitarian Universalism. The opening line of one of its verses is, "It's a blessing you were born." We've been so blessed by you being our minister for the past 10 years. We're blessed to have your ministry building our culture together for the year to come. A year from now, or maybe a bit more, we'll celebrate your ministry with us. That will be a key piece and a great celebration as you go into retirement. Before then, with your help, we'll put together a transition plan. We'll take advantage of Unitarian Universalist Association's guidance and resources, which outlines 3 phases to a ministerial transition. First, we have this time of celebrating with you, your time with us, and saying bon voyage, wishing you well on your life journey, of which we've been so fortunate to be part of. And then there's a second phase of our obtaining an interim minister. Clare is our intern minister. We'll be finding an interim minister for 1 or 2 years. And during that 1 or 2 year period, after you go into retirement, we'll work with the interim minister and we'll do a search for a match with our next called minister. So we'll have a 1 or 2 year break in the action before we call another minister. The interim minister will help us through that process. And then the third phase is that we'll find that match of a called minister and we'll bring them into covenant with us as we did with you 10 years ago. Now there's a wisdom to our having an interim minister between one called minister's parting and the calling of the next one. And I'll mention 3 aspects of this wisdom of having an interim minister. First, having an interim minister for 1 or 2 years gives us plenty of time to find a really good match, for us to put together a good, realistic sales package to advertise Namaqua and our area to a minister, and for us to review potential matches. So it takes away the time pressure and provides time for consideration and quality, a quality match. Second, having an interim minister will give us time to do a psychological switch of gears, to let go of your ministry and look forward to our next called minister. Our next called minister will be starting from scratch, of course, and it'd be unfair to compare their start, even as good as they will be, with what you accomplished running full steam with your knowing us so well. An interim minister gives us breathing space and reminds us of what it is to begin ministry anew. Finally, having an interim minister can help stir the pot and hold up a mirror to us, give us a fresh perspective of ourselves. leading us to deeper insights of what we'd like to ask of in our match with our next called minister. So the timeline looks something like this. The next church year, which starts in July, will celebrate with you and savor your presence for the whole year. And we'll also look for and contract with an interim minister. And then that following year, after you go into retirement, that'll be the 22-23 church year. That'll be the first year with our interim minister. And we'll put together a ministerial search committee who will prepare Namaqua's packet to advertise our availability. Either later that year or the year after that, depending upon how we're feeling with time, we'll be looking for a match between ourselves and a called minister. If we follow the usual practice, in the spring of one of those years, we'll invite a candidate to spend a week with us, and they'll lead the service for 2 Sundays, bookending that week with us. After which we'll have a congregational vote on whether to call them as our called minister. However long that takes, we have time to breathe, exhale, and let go, and breathe in to look forward to new possibilities. We're fortunate to have so much continuity as we proceed. We have Janus, our beloved Director of Religious Education, and she'll continue growing the hearts and minds of children, youth, and adults with her educational programs. Margot, our administrator, will also keep our gears oiled and turning. And our intern minister, Claire, will be with us through the next 2 years, including the first year of the interim minister's service with us. So Claire will get to know us over this next year, and then will be part of the continuity of moving forward in the following year with a new interim minister. So in summary, going forward, there's these 3 phases. Phase 1, the next church year, let's celebrate and savor Laurel being with us. And then we'll also, over this next year, look for and contract with an interim minister. And phase 2 is this time with the interim minister, which will take 1 or 2 years, and we'll put together Namaqua's advertising packet and look for a match with a minister ministerial candidates that we can call. And finally, in one of those years' springs, 2 or 3 years from now, we'll find a match and call a new minister. Laurel, thank you again for your 10 years of service with us, and thanks to Francie for her support of your ministry. We look forward to your last year with us. You serve as a reminder to hold time as precious. It's a blessing you were born.
Well, thank you, Doug. And if you remember, it's a blessing you were born, it's a blessing we were born. So really, that's the heart of our theology, is that we are born not sinners, we are born as a blessing to the world. And that's what we're doing together, is in the spirit of love, blessing the world. But life is full of joys and sorrows. And so let's go ahead and take time to share those. I think Atulia, you shared a few already in the chat, so I'll put a stone in for that. And so others of you who would like to share, would you please type I guess I see your name, but type your joy or sorrow and I will read it, and then put a stone in to represent the support that you're getting from our community. So Tracy has surgery tomorrow. All right, Tracy, put your name on my altar and let us know. I hope next Sunday you'll be back with us and tell us it was a success. Well, I'm not seeing any others. Oh, we've got Vicky asking for positive thoughts and energy for their son, Jeff, who has chosen to leave Boise, Idaho, and find a home and work in Denver. Well, that'll be great to have Jeff closer by. And I hope he does find a job. And then Francie's glad the cat is out of the bag. Yeah, it's been really hard. I think you know from the email that we're selling our house, which meant it was not a very relaxing sabbatical, but also I now have an apartment in Lincoln Place, and it's been hard for us not to just tell everybody what's going on. So we wanted to be very intentional about the timing, and this is a huge relief, even though it's bittersweet. So I'm glad the cat's out of the bag too. And Janet calls Francie the Michelle Obama of Namaqua. You're doing a great job, Francie. And really thank you for all of your support and for moving to Colorado with me. And Megan sending much love to me and Francie. Thank you for everything. And thank you for your kids who I love and for all that you and Glenn have done in your leadership. Watched Milo's soccer game yesterday. He's a very enthusiastic soccer player. And then we've got Atulia. So Vani, a young woman in Boulder, is having a complicated brain operation on Wednesday, starting in the morning and all day after a lifetime of procedures to fight a brain tumor. So we will definitely send hopes and prayers. And Atulia, I'll put Vani's name on my altar as well. Pete, I was going to mention that. My heart hurts for the horrible conflict in Israel and Gaza. I think all of us are distressed. It's so interesting that one of the hallmarks of Unitarian Universalism dates way back to King Sigismund, who was the only Unitarian king back in Transylvania, back in, forget if it was the 16th century. And he was very radical because he issued what's called an Edict of Tolerance. And what that meant is that people of varying religions, if they were in his country, they couldn't kill each other because they disagreed about anything. And so, it was Francis David, who was in his administration, who said, we don't need to think alike to love alike. And so what I keep thinking is of sending thoughts of tolerance and compromise and something to help resolve what just seems to be almost insoluble sometimes, insolvable. And actually I did, whoops. That's the sound of paper crashing. I was covering up a window that was shining on the picture behind me. But oh no, and Tracy, my nephew's partner, Paul, lost his life in a car accident. I'm sorry. So does anyone else want to add anything right now? So I always like to add some more, representing what may be in your hearts and perhaps too tender to speak out loud. And today I did specifically light these candles behind me to represent the joys and the sorrows beyond our community. And I was specifically going to mention what's happening in Israel and Gaza. So we can do what we can where we are and cultivate peace. That song that says, may there be peace on earth and may it start with me. So we start with ourselves and with our community. So if you repeat after me, in our joy and in our sorrow, we are not alone. Now a musical response. Melanie DeMore singing at Freight and Salvage in Berkeley.
I am to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. No matter where you go, no matter where you've been, you'll never walk alone. I feel you deep within. So I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to heal you, hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. No matter what you feel or what you choose to show, I'm always there for you. And so I want you to know that I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I walk the path with you. Go slow, dear one, don't hurry. I'll go just like you need to go. There is no need to worry, 'cause I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I am sending you light to hold you in love. I am sending you light to heal you, to hold you. I I am sending you light to hold you in love.
And now for our offering. We have as our half plate recipient this quarter, the Loveland Youth Gardeners, a very special organization that helps work with children and teach them gardening skills. The participants in the program, which will include Aiden Christensen this coming summer, grow their own gardens, and they're taught a gardening curriculum that emphasizes sustainable horticulture practices. So Chad will put in the chat room the giving link that you can click on. You can also always send your donations into the church, to the church address. And now another song, this one, Sensitive Souls, Wildwood Flower. So please be generous and enjoy the music.
Cherish me over all others above. How my heart is no wandering, no misery can tell. He's left me no warning, no words of farewell. Oh, he taught me to love him and called me his flower. That was blooming to cheer him through life's dreary hour. Oh, I long to see him regret the dugout. He's gone and neglected his pale wildwood flower. Oh, I long to see him regret the dugout. He's gone and neglected his pale wildwood flower.
Please repeat after me to bless our offering. We dedicate ourselves, and these are offerings, to the vision of this congregation, which is to radiate love, peace, and justice, as together we work to build beloved community. So that song includes the lyrics. Well, not only I love the music and the scenery, but one of the lyrics was, "He left with no warning, no word of farewell." Well, that's not the case with us. So I'm giving you plenty of notice, even though my letter of agreement says I only need to give 2 months. And we are going to have a long, wonderful, I hope, farewell. And, you know, Doug has taught a course based on a book that actually Lydia and I read quite a while ago. It's called Transitions, Making Sense of Life's Changes. And it talks about the relationship between endings and beginnings. And one of the wise parts of that process is that it doesn't go like end, begin. There's what William Bridges calls a neutral zone in between, which is uncomfortable, but very, very fertile. And that's kind of what the interim period will be. And as Doug mentioned, I'm certainly happy that Claire will be with the congregation, not only this year for my last year with you, but also will provide some continuity. And if you haven't been able to tell already, I think that you're going to really enjoy getting to know Claire, and he will enjoy getting to know you. But I almost mentioned during the earlier part, and I'm going to end with this because we're basically almost out of time, but when I came here, fate had dealt me some blows, which is that in May of 2010, my father died. And in June of 2010, the next month, my mother died. Both of them were at home, and their marriage had lasted 62 years. And then I was teaching for the bar exam and didn't say a word to my students. And then after the course was over, Francie and I went to Bodega Bay, which is on the coast of California, to just lick my wounds and grieve. And I got a call from my supervisor at my faculty job who said, this was in July, that I was laid off from the job that I'd had, for like 20 years. So I it's like boom, boom, boom. And then the next month I turned 60. So I would tease with my friends. It's like, oh my God, I'm a 60-year-old unemployed orphan. And when I put my search packet together, the final page in it was this. It's a picture that Francie took of me pretending like I was stepping off of a cliff when we were at Bodega Bay. And she photoshopped my little dog Rosie into it. And it's based on a tarot card called the Fool. And so the words that were on that last page are, what we call the beginning is often the end. And to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. So that's T.S. Eliot. And then my last word in my packet was from Billy Joel. I have been a fool for lesser things. So we will continue our foolish journey together for one more year. And I want to offer you a closing song that is very much in the spirit of what we have been doing together and what I hope we will continue to do and what I hope that you will continue to do after I leave. Oh yeah. So like Claire read in the story, take your heart out of the bottle, put it on the chair, and enjoy the wonderful world. And so Claire, you want to read our extinguishing chalice words?
The earth says my name. She speaks in lush rose gardens and sturdy brown rocks. Don't walk away from hurt, she says. Don't evade the bitterness of growth. Growth, she says, comes in sundry cocoons. We must fight to break through each phase. Again, the words of Mercy Williams. Let's take a moment to breathe in gratitude for every moment that we have together. take a moment to look across your screen and really see everyone who's here. Look at the people wrapped in this sundry cocoon all together. Look at the faces of the people we are breaking through with, and allow a smile of gratitude to spread across your face. And now together, we're going to breathe out the hopes of tomorrow with a breath big enough to extinguish our chalice.
We lift up our hearts in thanks for the gathered community which welcomes us as we are from wherever we have come.
For all things which come to us as gifts of being from sources beyond ourselves, gifts of life and love and friendship, we lift up our hearts in thanks today. This is the day we have been given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Next week, Janus has a delightful service planned. It's a multi-generational service that shares what we learn from animals. And I've seen some of the clips that she'll show, and they're really, really delightful. And then after, we'll have our Spring Congregational meeting, which we do at the end of each church year. So I will talk a little bit about the state of the church, and we'll have a report from the leadership groups and thank all of those of you who have volunteered. We'll also approve the budget and elect some new leaders who will be in the board, Committee on Shared Ministries, and the Leadership Development Committee, which are the three groups of elected leadership in our very horizontal leadership power structure. We're not a hierarchical congregation. We are all standing on the ground together, loving and hugging each other. And then there is an auction that will be like no other. Most things this year have had to be adapted to staying physically apart. So I hope by next year we can actually get together for our auction. But this year, Doug has been working hard on finding some kind of a program where we can have an online or a Zoom auction or something virtual on June 6th. So it will be on Saturday, June 6th or 5th, excuse me, from 7 to 9 p.m. And there will also be an online auction with bidding that is open a couple of weeks before that. And I didn't mention the Spring Congregational meeting will be after the service next week from 11:30 to 1. And it's really important that you come because for one thing, we need a quorum to conduct any business. And I think we have some exciting news for you in terms of what this year's budget will be allowing in the coming year. And so with no further ado, let us, oh, and Diane says that one of our traditions, she has the sculpture that she won last year, and it's supposed to go to a new home every year. And so please do drop it by the church and we'll see who's the lucky one who gets custody of it for this coming year. And so as I mentioned, I think all of us staying together, at least for a little while, might be a good opportunity for those of you who would like to ask any further questions about the announcement, or if you will have any response that you'd like to share. It won't be your last chance, but I wanted to open it up and see whether anyone has any comments or questions. And if so, I guess type your name into the chat and then I'll call on you.